Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have concerns or are seeking a diagnosis or treatment, please seek individual advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks associated with acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride.
Please drink responsibly and in moderation. Before drinking, please be sure to be of the legal drinking age for your country. We do not encourage the misuse of alcohol. Hey, welcome back to Medical Media Mixer. I'm Tara Prisco, and we're doing something a little bit different today. No cocktail, no pop culture pairing, no deep dive rabbit hole. Well, maybe a little one. This is The Shot, a quick hit on a medical news story that's been making the rounds and honestly too important to wait for a full episode to air. I'm going to give you the facts, break down what it actually means for you, and get you out of here in under 10 minutes because your time matters and this story is worth knowing. So let's get into it. Here's what you need to know about Ibogaine. We covered other psychedelics like LSD in episode 67, the upside down cocktail, psilocybin in episode 45, the tranquillium tonic, and DMT in episode 20, the Jesse and the psychedelic frog. So let's set the scene. It's Saturday afternoon. Joe Rogan is standing behind the President of the United States while he signs an executive order on psychedelic drugs. And according to Rogan himself, it started with a text. Rogan told reporters he learned about Ibogaine from a guest on his podcast, W. Brian Hubbard, CEO of Americans for Ibogaine, and from former Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who had undergone the treatment himself. Rogan was moved enough to send Trump a quick message about it. And Trump's reply, quote, "Sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it." All right, guys, that's not exactly how things work in the FDA, but we'll take it. Literally, that quick, Trump signed the executive order directing the FDA to fast-track review of Ibogaine, psilocybin, MDMA, and LSD, all currently Schedule I controlled substances. The order also directs at least $50 million in federal funding towards states developing psychedelic therapy programs and opens the door for Ibogaine to be included under the Right to Try Act, which allows terminally ill patients to access experimental treatment still under FDA review. FDA Commissioner Macari announced that the agency will be issuing national priority vouchers for 3 psychedelics, allowing them to move through the approval process faster if they align with national health priorities. And for the first time, the FDA is clearing the way for human trials of Ibogaine on U.S. soil. Previous research has been stalled for years because of safety concerns, specifically its potential to trigger fatal heart symptoms, which we will get into in a moment. So what exactly is Ibogaine, and why are our veterans and researchers so excited about it? Are you a little curious? I am. So I took a look at the data. Ibogaine is a naturally occurring psychedelic compound found in the root bark of the iboga plant, a shrub that's native to West Central Africa. For thousands of years, indigenous groups have used it in spiritual and ceremonial rituals. But it wasn't until the 1960s that the Western researchers started paying attention to its potential for addiction treatment, largely because people who used it were reporting that their drug cravings just disappeared. And here's what makes Ibogaine neurologically unique. Unlike other psychedelics, your psilocybin, your LSD, Ibogaine hits multiple brain systems at once. It interacts with receptors in opioid signaling, dopamine, which is the brain's reward chemical, and serotonin, which governs mood. Scientists believe its anti-addiction effects stem largely from its activity on nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the ventral trigeminal area, a region deep in the brain that is central to addiction pathways. When you take Ibogaine, the body rapidly converts it into a metabolite called noribogaine, which stays in the system much longer. That extended presence in the body may be part of why people report lasting effects, sometimes weeks or months after a single dose. So what does the research actually show? Here's where it gets exciting from a clinical standpoint, but also where I have to put on my evidence-based medicine hat. The data we have is promising, but it's early. A 2022 systematic review looked at 24 studies involving 705 people who received Ibogaine or noribogaine. The findings that a single dose of Ibogaine reduced opioid and heroin cravings by more than 50% for up to 24 weeks post-treatment. That's pretty striking. For context, most of our current addiction pharmacotherapy requires daily dosing indefinitely. But the study that's really captured the attention of the veteran community, and frankly the whole country, was published in Nature Medicine in 2024. Researchers followed 30 special operations veterans with traumatic brain injuries. 1 month after a single Ibogaine treatment, 86% were in remission from PTSD, 83% from depression, and 83% from anxiety. One treatment, 1 month. So those are numbers we don't usually see in psychiatry. This is why you had Marcus Luttrell standing in the Oval Office. This isn't fringe science anymore. It's catching the attention of military medicine, major research institutions, of course now the federal government. As of 2025, there are 9 active clinical trials registered worldwide, and a phase 1/2A trial has already been completed. More than 10,000 people globally have sought Ibogaine treatment in countries where it's unregulated. Here's the catch, though. I can't talk about Ibogaine without talking about the reason it's been stuck in Schedule I limbo for decades. And it's not just politics. It's actually because of an effect it could have on the heart. Ibogaine can cause a dangerous prolongation of what's called the QT interval, a measure of how the heart resets between each beat. When that interval stretches too long, it can trigger a life-threatening arrhythmia called torsades de poids. At least 27 deaths have been reported following Ibogaine use. And critically, some of these occurred even in people without pre-existing heart disease. There also appears to be a genetic component. Variations in liver enzymes called CYP2D6 allow how quickly the individuals can metabolize Ibogaine, meaning some people are at significantly higher risk than others, and we can't always predict who that will be. Other side effects include severe temporary loss of coordination, tremors, nausea, headaches, and in rare cases, mania or psychosis. It also has dangerous interactions with opioids and other medications, which is a real concern when you're treating people who are already actively struggling with opioid use disorder. So, what does responsible administration look like? Researchers are converging on a protocol that includes a comprehensive cardiac screening before treatment, continuous cardiac monitoring during and after dosing, genetic testing via that CYP2D6, careful washout from long-acting opioids prior to treatment, and co-administration of magnesium, which evidence suggests can reduce some of that cardiac risk. Johns Hopkins researcher Frederick Barrett put it well. I'm paraphrasing here, but if this executive order can pave the way for rigorous, objective clinical trials, it could finally help us understand whether Ibogaine is truly better than other psychedelic therapies. That's the key word, rigorous. The science has to really take the lead. So what happens next? What is the process here? So the short version is that the FDA directed to fast-track breakthrough therapy designations for Ibogaine and other psychedelics. $50 million in federal funds will go to states developing psychedelic therapy programs. Ibogaine is being considered for inclusion under the Right to Try Act. And for the first time, FDA-approved human trials of Ibogaine in the U.S. are being cleared for launch. The agency is issuing national priority vouchers to speed approval if safety and efficacy are demonstrated. Researchers are working on Ibogaine analogs, compounds designed to preserve the anti-addiction mechanism while limiting the cardiac toxicity. If those pan out, we could eventually have Ibogaine-derived treatments that are dramatically safer to administer in standard clinical settings. But let's be honest, this is very early stage science with a very complicated safety profile. The conventional evidence-based treatments for addiction and PTSD remain the standard of care for right now. What's changing is, for the first time in a long time, the regulatory environment may allow for us to do research because we need to find out whether Ibogaine deserves a place alongside those standardized treatments. Not conventional, a text, a signature on an executive order, and maybe, just maybe, a shift in how we treat some of these very treatment-resistant conditions that we face in medicine and psychiatry. PTSD, opioid addiction, traumatic brain injury. So these are patients who've run out of options. If this maybe delivers a fracture of what it's promising, this news could be life-changing for these people. But again, we need the time and the science to figure that out. We'll be watching this one closely. We'll keep you updated on the clinical trials as they roll out. And of course, as usual, all of our sources will be in the show notes. Remember to rate, review, and always follow us on our socials. And send us an email if you have any other questions or suggestions about some things we can feature on the shot. Thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Medical Media Mixer podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps others find the show. Want to keep the conversation going? Follow us on social media. We're at Medical Media Mixer Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and on Pinterest, the Medical Media Mixer board.
If you'd like to support the show and help us grow, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast, and on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. If you have a topic idea, feedback, or just want to say hi, send us an email at medicalmediamixer@gmail.com. You can also stream all of our episodes and find more info on our website, medicalmediamixer.podbean.com. We're available on all major podcast platforms, so no matter where you listen, we're there. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep mixing medicine and media.